Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Itsuchi here, and we are talking about Ultimate Jutsu still. This is one of those situations in the development process where it's a lot. You do so much work, and then it seems like you're in the same exact spot that you left off. Like, it's obviously better, you know what you've done, and you know the quality improvements that it's given, but it's also like, but this is still the same. It's not, you haven't added anything new to the game. That's what it feels like right now. Like, oh my god, how are we still talking about Ultimate Jutsu? Like, how are we still not at full cinematics? I can move on. But yet, and still, even though that's true, I still have quite a bit to talk about with you guys, and some really interesting finds and things to discuss. AI getting involved at this point, because oh my gosh, this is why I dread doing certain things, because I know how much of a pain it's going to be. Not necessarily adding the feature, but all the parts of the code that are going to break when I add it. And you spend more time fixing new issues that have come up, fixing things that broke, than you do actually on adding the new feature. But I do have some exciting things to discuss today. First, I wanted to briefly mention in the last video, there was something, let me go ahead and start the game up. There was something that I did add, and it's not super major, I just forgot to mention it. And I'll show it to you really quickly so you guys can see it, what it was. Again, the whole point of these vlogs, like I say, for this series, isn't necessarily to show you, oh, here's all the Ultimate Jutsu I've added. This is so you guys can see behind the scenes, really get a deep look into the development process of a game, specifically with this series being the topic of adding cinematic Ultimate Jutsu. It is not as simple as it seems. So last time we discussed that Jutsu are based on rotation, so like if I do it from this side, it will face the direction that I was when I started the jutsu. So we already talked about that. But one small thing that I forgot to mention was also I added in a timer for when each player can move again. So the main player using their jutsu can move immediately. Here we go. So this frame. So on frame 1, I now have movement. Naruto has movement. Sakura is still on the ground. I added in, I can do a custom timer. I think I did 15 frames maybe. I don't remember. But I added in a timer so that way she cannot get up immediately. So there is a little bit, just a small recovery. So that way, obviously the player who uses the cinematic, who can move immediately, has time to figure out what's happening before player 2 stands. Yeah, see, Sakura's still on the ground. Naruto has full movement. I'm obviously not moving because it's paused, but Naruto has full movement and Sakura still can't move until now she finally gets up. So yeah. And now she can move. So yeah, that's just something that I did add in the last, by the last video. I just forgot to mention it. So, now that we're here, you may have noticed the cinematic looks for the most part the same. I haven't added anything directly to the cinematic itself since the last video, but I did change one thing. In the last video and the ones prior, their startup animation was a kick, but that kick was a very quick kick. It was designed for a linkable combo, and it was too quick, it was unrealistic timing-wise. So I decided to change the move using that forced combo technique we talked about in the very first video, and changed it to Sasuke's 6B. So that's the new startup move. And it just feels a little bit better in terms of starting up more like a cinematic jutsu. There's a little bit more time to react to it. Yeah. Yay. So yeah, that's all. That's all I changed on the actual cinematic. What we'll discuss today, I don't want to make any promises, but I will try to keep this video a little bit shorter than the previous ones, just because this one doesn't, again, I don't have anything new to show on the physical cinematic. This jutsu is about the everything else, literally everything else, to get the cinematic working. So starting off, is there anything I did in single player? No, I think I had single player working pretty well because I've just been testing a single player practice. So what we will start with is I will show you what team battles happens. Yeah, that's a good place to start. Team battles. So the issue with team battles is, if I start a cinematic with team members, what happens to them if they're on stage? I would need to disable them and return them. So that was my first tackle. and I will show you what that looks like. Right now, this actually isn't 100% working. It's working about 50% of the time. Basically, the problem is that, yeah, let me see if I can just replicate it. So the reason I have them dropping is so I want the players the supports to stay on stage when the cinematic hits, so I'll need them to go under, so like this. Stuff like this would break the original Clash of Ninja games. So I'm going to pause it and see if this was a hit or miss. Alright, so here, there we go. Now that the animate, that's where we should be. Alright, so this looks like this was a success. Nope, this was the glitch. Sasuke was supposed to continue his move, and now he's backflipping out of the way. That is the problem. Something is happening when a cinematic ends that tells a support that's active on stage that they're done and they can just leave. Particularly the method that's called as the can move method, which means you finished attacking and now we're restoring movement to the player, which if you're support, restoring movement to the player means get off the stage, you're done, leave. So for some reason, something is calling this, and I don't think it's actually within Sasuke's character's code, because I did several checks for that specific method. So basically I added in a debug code that says log a thing to the console whenever this code is called from within your program. And for some reason, even though it's getting called, his code is not calling it. So that means something externally, perhaps, is telling his code to move. But it's not 100% of the time. And that's what's making it hard to isolate. Let me just reset. All right. So we'll try this again and see what happens. So Sasuke should continue with his punch. And he didn't. So this is actually, this is annoying because it's actually, I was needing to test something last night and it was almost like not being able to repeat the issue. Alright, that time he just happened to hit and I still got the hit in. So let's see what happens this time. I get a different response every single time. Okay, see, this time it succeeded. See, he's finishing the combo. This should be what happens 100% of the time. He should finish his move exactly where he left off before. And then when the move's done, then can move is called, and then he leaves. This is what should be happening 100% of the time, but as you clearly just saw in this example, same exact code's running, slightly different circumstances, but it doesn't matter. Whether he hits or not, it just, the performance is inconsistent. He can hit and still, like in this particular example, he hit Naruto before I did the attack. So just stuff like that happens. So this one isn't 100% done because I just need to expand my debugging search to cover all the other possible reasons where that can be called and all the other possible objects that can be spawned that could be calling that. But that's just an example of inconsistent behavior. But I've gotten it to where at least the character is still returning to his position after the cinematics end. Like, it's not causing any formal glitches with the battle system. For some things, and there are situations where it does run perfectly. So I do know that the code, the way it's designed, is fine. There's just one line probably somewhere that's calling this move, that's telling Sasuke to move again when he shouldn't be. He should be mid-combo, and that's where I've got to find. But otherwise, the game is still running fine. Like, there's no glitches with me using a cinematic jutsu while there's teammates on stage. And team jutsu will work a little bit different because with a team jutsu, I haven't added in team jutsu yet, but if I were to use a team jutsu, it wouldn't matter. Sasuke wouldn't need to continue his combo afterwards because he's obviously going to be teleported to participate in the cinematic jutsu. So we wouldn't need to continue the team support at that situation. So this is kind of isolated to using regular cinematic jutsu when there's team members on stage. So yeah, this is like a 50% fix. Yeah, but the game is working otherwise with that. The biggest things that I had to work on was, when I say everything else, I mean everything else. Because all my testing happens in practice, I never considered what happens in versus in terms of like the rules, and it turns out I had completely effed up the battle system when I added in Team Jutsu, specifically the rotation pot of the jutsu. You couldn't actually win a game anymore. If you ended the game with a cinematic, the game would not end. I figured that fix out. That was a pretty quick fix. Just one line of code fixed that. But most importantly was what happens when you do win, because what was happening is mid cinematic, when that final hit would trigger the end of like, oh, you've won the battle would end in the middle of the cinematic, which is a huge problem. You'd be mid cinematic and the camera's doing weird stuff because it's trying to get to the next phase. So I had to program logic in that would still, if you win the battle normally, it would run the code normally, but if you're in a cinematic, it'll delay everything until after the cinematic. But we also don't want all the timing delays. Like, you know, after you deliver the final hit, there's a small, like, I think I put it at 2.5 seconds of a delay before it moves on to the next phase. We don't want to wait for cinematic to finish and then wait another 2.5 seconds. We want that to start immediately. So I had to add in logic that still keeps the 2.5 seconds if it's not a cinematic, but still executes immediately after the cinematic. This all stuff sounds self-explanatory, like, yeah, duh, why wouldn't you add that? But this is not stuff one thinks about when he's adding Ultimate Jutsu. This is stuff that happens, and you're like, oh, that's weird. And then you have to address it. But the good news is I am not going to do team battles for this. I'm just going to do a regular battle for the moment. The good news is I have addressed all these things. It took a very long time, but I have addressed all of these things. I'll play as Naruto because he's got insane combos. Let's go to a different stage. I'm going to have it the same stage. We'll play a third training field. Oh, I'm going to add player 2 so they don't fight back, just so I can end this quickly. Oh my god, we're already at 11 minutes. Jeez. Ugh. I try to keep it short, I do, but I get caught up in the excitement of it all. Okay, let's load up this battle. Alright. So I'm just gonna beat the shit out of Naruto so I can show you what happens when we win the game with the cinematic. Alright, here we go. Alright, so now I'm gonna use the cinematic and we'll see what happens at the end. So this is where the game ends. Yeah. And there we go. So that's how it ends. This is obviously temporary, so obviously there will need to be proper victory poses, and I will be able to use the same cutscene logic for those. So that'll be coming shortly after cinematic jutsu. I'll probably take a break from cinematics, maybe. We'll see, because this stuff is so exhausting. But for victory poses, part of the reason why I haven't added victory poses is it's not as simple as adding victory poses. There's a whole cutscene with camera manipulation with victory poses. So not only do I have to add in the victory animation, but I have to do all camera manipulation, and all of that. Again, it's not just as simple as, oh, why are there no intros or extras? Because those are cutscenes, and I haven't added cutscenes into the game. Having a transition from a cutscene, having the game start with the cutscene, all of that stuff is uncharted territory for me. But that's why this little cinematic, this is actually programmed animation with the camera angle, not it's not an actual cutscene. That's why I added that, and the characters are just told to be stationary. So that's why that little animation's there. That's not a cutscene, that's just a quick camera manipulation animation, not a cutscene, versus a cinematic is a full cutscene. I don't need to redo this. The next issue was, if you guys remember, again, for this placeholder, again, not a huge issue for the future, but for right now, before I get to intros and outros, there was an issue with the final, what do you call it? The final pose. If you win in a team battle, I'll have the teammates drop down right next to the main character, the lead, so they kind of do a final victory, like, oh, we're the team that won. So I just do that for the winning team. And there was I forgot to spawn in P2, so let me have to actually fight them. Why is it slow? I hate the editor. The editor just sometimes doesn't run well. Here with the terrible performance, you're in the editor. Okay, Naruto, quit it. Let me show the people how, like, the stupid game! Get away! Alright, now let me just land this jutsu. Be still. Yes, okay. So just like they spawned here, so two things with this. First, when I first did this, for some reason when the characters would spawn, they would not know the game ended and then they would just start fighting. And so they'd just be fighting the dummy. Get off my PC. So they would just start fighting the dummy on the ground, the dead guy. And the funniest part is then it would get really weird is since they've been spawned onto the game, they thought they were playing. And so then they would try to switch out with me, the inactive character. So then I can't move right now. But then when they would tag out with me, I would regain movement in this end of game state. And at one point, I actually somehow, I don't know how I did it or how they did it, I guess. They somehow gave me access to 2 characters at the same time. It was so weird. So lots of weird things were happening. But I did finally figure out what was happening. It was just a firing when the cinematic ended and they were brought back in. All this stuff was happening at the same time when there was normally delays between them. So things were getting fired before other parts of the code. And that was causing them to get spawned in before realizing, or no, that's what was happening. I would tell the game that it's ended before they were spawned back in, which would cause them to not receive that information. So they're like, we're here and we're queer, what's happening? And the battle's already ended, but they have no idea, so they would start fighting. So anyway, I finally got that order back into place, and they now know that they should not be fighting when they're spawned back in, and this handles appropriately. So yeah. The final thing I wanted to discuss was similarly to what I showed you guys in the prior example. Oh my god, excuse me. With the teammates disappearing and obviously having the issues with Sasuke not doing his combo. Royale was a problem because now you have up to 8 characters who all need to be restored to their thing, their previous position. This was what I've spent the most time addressing over the last day. So I will play as Naruto. We'll just pick a bunch of rookies. What's a fun stage that I haven't shown off yet? I guess I've shown off all these stages. I guess you can't get enough of Tenchi Bridge. I really love Tenchi Bridge. Oh gosh, I have kind of like PTSD from all the times I've had to, because there's no way for me to test Royale in practice. So every single time I needed to test if my code was working, I had to play at least half a battle of Royale. And don't get me wrong, don't get me started when the jutsus would fail. Or one time I had to build up all my chakra, and then right as I got all my chakra and was preparing, Sasuke threw a demon moon shuriken at me, which drained all my chakra because it's a guard shadow. Don't do it, Sasuke. Alright. Got him. Alright. Sorry for it's running slow, this is just problems with the editor. Alright, so the issues with this is that all these characters have been turned off, so they're not blocking the cinematic, and now I've got to turn them back on, and they continue what they were doing before. Oh, I forgot about that logic. Oh, I just remembered there was another thing I need to fix in Royale that I haven't fixed yet. If you kill someone in Royale with a cinematic, your arrow switches, like your target switches. And what happens is, yeah, it gets really funky mid-animation because it runs that part of the code while the cinematic's running. So it'll switch your target when the target should not be switched at all until after the cinematics ended. So like there was this example where the player got killed with a prior hit, and then the follow-up hit attacked the player it switched to, even though they weren't in the cinematic. So yeah, I totally forgot about that because it's only if you kill the player mid-game in a Royale specifically. I did it once. I was like, oh, I need to fix it. I totally forgot to fix it. I just remembered. So this isn't 100% done. It won't happen in this example because Sasuke's still alive. But the biggest thing that I've spent all my time with, and the reason why I forgot about this issue, is when the objects get turned back on, they would enter T-pose and be stuck in T-pose until they do another action, which was obviously extremely problematic because if you're throwing a punch and suddenly you're in T-pose, that punch will not connect because the hand is now down. So even though the hitbox turns on, it's not in a position where it can actually hit the other player. So obviously that will be a huge game-breaking thing every time a cinematic ended. If people, and also visually it's ugly when people just are standing in T-pose mid-game. So that took so much time to fix, so I'm going to cross my fingers. I actually didn't test a lot because I fixed it just before I went to bed last night, so let's just hope it's still working. So all the characters should spawn back in. Yep. Yay, no T-poses! It was really funny too because dead characters as well, who were killed, would then be standing. So yeah. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, everyone continues exactly where they were, and the fight resumes. So this took me way... Oh, I thought she was in T-pose at first. This took me way too long to fix. T-pose is the least of my issues. Getting them to resume, all kinds of problems. Their overdrive will be refilling. Just all kinds of problems were being caused by it. I did end up finding a fix for it. The issue was... I don't know if you guys remember the last video that I told you about that when I would disable the objects, I had a theory that by disabling the parent, it should stop everything, all timers, and then the timer should resume once the game objects are turned back on. And that was just a theory, but I was sure it would work. It didn't work. For some strange reason, Unity has a system where you can tell something to happen after a certain delay. This is really good for games like this in timing. For example, throw a punch, and then after 60 frames have passed, they return to basic movement. That's what those timers are for. You run one line of code, and then give it all the instructions, and then it runs the code and then processes instructions on those timers. When the game object is disabled and the script is not running, it keeps running the timers. So all those timers that would tell it to can move or when it can do the next combo hit would all expire mid cutscene, which completely F's up where the character's state is, because they would be starting a punch and then suddenly they can't move anymore because the code's already expired the amount of time allotted for that particular animation. Same thing with hitboxes. Hitboxes are on those timers. Turn on the hitbox on frame 12, disabled hitbox on frame 18. But both of those timers expire during a cutscene, so that the hitbox never gets turned on in game. See the problems? So it took me so long. I worked on this for hours. So what I did was, the first thing I tried was I asked ChatGPT if I could its suggestions, and they brought up, yeah, that is a thing, you're correct. For some reason, Unity's invoke is what they call it, invoke with the delay, still runs while the game object is disabled, and it suggested maybe doing what's called a coroutine. You don't need to know what that is, just know a coroutine. The reason it suggested that was coroutines, timers, they can do timers, and the timers will pause when the game object's disabled, and that's what I need to happen. So I did we came up with a position to do the coroutines, and like a custom version of invoke that would then do the timers, but those timers, now that they're using coroutines, will then pause. And that was true. It did pause with the cinematics. The problem is the timing was all effed up. Like, I would tell it to do something on frame 12 and it would suddenly be doing it on frame 25. And there was no reasoning behind it. It just wasn't behaving the same way. Completely broke the game, broke the physics, broke everything. It created way more problems than I was expecting. I worked on it for hours, constantly tweaking things. Every time I have an issue, I'd tell ChatGPT. We'd reconstruct the way it works, and then re-edit it into the game, test it. And again, every time I test it, I have to come into Royale and see if it worked. And oh my God, so many tests in practice and all these different places. And I never got it to work, and it was so funny. I stayed up to 4 a.m. This was 2 days ago. I stayed up to 4 a.m. and it still wasn't working. And I was like, I'm spent. I can't do another iteration of this. It was actually really funny because this day was so weird. I stayed up to 4 a.m. and then I was like, I'm done. And just as I'm getting ready to go to bed, my partner wakes up and comes down. Like, I wasn't sleeping well, so I just got up early. So he woke up at the same time I'm going to bed, and then later on when I woke up, he was going to bed. It was so weird. But anyway, that aside, it was super funny because the next morning I didn't have any ideas of what I was going to do, and then I just randomly decided while I was getting ready, I just put up my phone and went to ChatGPT and was like, hey, what if we scrap this? We go back to invoke, but what if we just like have a code that tracks the timers? So if there's a timer, what we'll do is if a cinematic starts, we'll cancel the timer, because you can cancel the timer and it won't do anything. So we can cancel all the timers, and then when the cinematic ends, we'll pick it up where it left off just by calling it again with the remaining time. And it was like, yeah, that's perfect. We'll do it. First time, tried it and it worked. I was so angry. It's like I spent so much time doing all these things, all these hours debugging and coming up with nothing, and then in like 5 minutes the next morning, I come up with the solve that works perfectly. Super annoying when that happens. And it happens frequently. I'll be so stumped working on something for hours, get so tired and stressed, I'll go take a nap, and while I'm sitting there half asleep, I'll be like, maybe this will work. And then it ends up working. I'm mad that like 5 minutes of thinking while I'm asleep was somehow more efficient than hours of very critical, high level thinking. So anyway, that happened here, and I finally got it to clearly work. All the characters, the timers work. I was able to pick up and resume where they left off. Thanks, ChatGPT, for the help. Because what ChatGPT does is I'll come up with the ideas and brainstorm with it, and it'll tell me if it's possible. Like, hey, can we do a timer, and does it work that way? And I'm like, yes, it does. And then I'll be like, okay, cool. Can you write me, like, in this case, I had it write the script for me. I was like, hey, write me a program that I can use within my game that will do that. And so it did, and it wrote me. All I did was add that into my game, and then I can call it, hey, when the game object is disabled, tell it to pause all the timers, and it'll handle all of that. And then when the game object resumes, hey, tell it to resume the timers, and it'll resume them. All exactly how they left off. Infinitely scalable, so I can run it with as many characters as I want. And it ended up working. And now look at this. We have a game that can now use cinematics mid, and it continues. Notice in my debug menu down here, the console actually, there are no errors, meaning there was no issues in the code that caused from them all getting turned off for however many frames the cinematic and then turned back on. The only issue, like I said, is if you kill a character mid-game, like mid-cinematic, it will run the code immediately for switching, because if a character dies, you need to switch target immediately because they're dead. They cannot be locked on anymore. They've been ejected from the game. I need to run that particular code, set a delay. The way I can do it is all I say is if the game is in cinematic, keep calling itself. And so every single frame it'll check, are we in cinematic? Are we in cinematic? Are we in cinematic? Are we in a cinematic? And it'll just keep checking itself. So it's running the code repeatedly, that line, until the cinematic ends. And then as soon as the cinematic ends, is cinematic true or false? Oh, it's false. Oh, okay, cool. Now we can resume, run all the code as it's supposed to be ran. So this doesn't actually, that way the code doesn't process until after the cinematic ends. So I just need to add that tiny bit of logic into the switching code for when you defeat a character. Hey, don't switch the target until after the cinematic over. The other issue is the arrows. The arrows also need to receive that information. So when I came back, not only was my target switched to the new player already, and all the damage from the cinematic was going to the new target mid cutscene, but my arrow was actually still pointing at the prior target because the arrow was disabled and never received the information somehow that the game had. Yeah. So anyway, that's a pretty easy fix. If I wait until after the cinematic ends, the arrows will be back in the game, and then they'll receive that information that the target has switched. So that's my next steps, fixing that glitch that I totally forgot about. Finding out what's causing that 50% error with team battles where the character is just totally getting told to leave, and making sure it doesn't affect Royale. Like, I don't know if it's affecting these characters because it's a little bit harder to track what 8 characters we're supposed to be doing. So I don't know if it affects Royale. Like, for example, if Kiba was throwing a punch, or if Sasuke perhaps was doing something. Oh no, Sasuke was dead. So I don't know what they were doing. So if I want to make sure that I fixed in team battles and ensure that it's not also simultaneously occurring in Royale. I didn't observe it happening here. Everyone seemed to resume exactly what they were doing, but I don't know what they were supposed to be doing. In team battles, that's easy because I know they're supposed to do a specific combo. So if they stop that combo, I know they're not doing it. I have no idea what they were doing or what they were supposed to be doing. And it's also computers. What if the computer just chose not to do another combo? So don't know if it's affecting Royale, but I will, once I discover what the issue is, I will be able to determine if that is also affecting Royale. And if so, was it already addressed when I fixed it there, or is it do I need to find another place where it needs to be addressed? So this video is just as long as the other ones. So that's my next steps, finding out those final few glitches. So I guess it's really just the 2. Figuring out, making sure that the characters are continuing to execute their code, that can move, is not getting ran, like fired from whatever's causing it to get fired. I need to figure out what's triggering it. And then also making sure I add the delay to the switching logic, so that way they don't actually process the switching of targets when they kill it mid-cinematic until after the cinematic ends, to avoid new characters or the new target getting the damage from the remaining attack. I'll go ahead and finish this battle for you so you can see the ending pose. I'll try to end it with cinematic. But yeah, once I fix those two things, we should finally be able to move on to adding in like a formal, proper, permanent ultimate like team battle, like a 2-man squad or a 3-man squad team attack. I hate that it's running slow. It's probably my PC's hot because it's recording and running the editor at the same time. It does make it kind of frustrating because the delay, I'm used to these combos being much faster. I'm going to save my chakra and try to end the game with it. And also as a final test to make sure Royale is able to... Kiba! How does Kiba have so much health? Let's go ahead and kill Choji. And then we'll use our use of Jutsu. Oh yeah, also, I won't show it in here because there's no point. But, timer. Also the timer, I had to program it, the timer to be able to end. Okay, hold on, let me kill Keeper really quickly. Got him!
Battle is over. You better believe it! Winner! I'm gonna become Hokage!
No glitches! Oh, what is that? Hitbox on. Oh, yeah. That's just a sometimes randomly... Yeah. This is not a major thing. Just sometimes randomly, if, like, yeah, the hitbox might get called and they're like, wait, right hand. So, yeah. That's not a game thing. That had nothing to do with the cinematics or anything like that. It's not game breaking. It doesn't actually cause any inconsistencies in the game. I've just seen it sometimes will happen in Royale because all the different changes and stuff happening with 8 players fighting at the same time and it's so dynamic. Some lines may slip through the cracks, but it doesn't stop the game from running. So anyway, so yeah, yay, it worked. We are all set. I'll fix those 2 things, and then we should be able to move on. The last thing that I did mention was the timer. I had to just change the timer so that the timer, when it's on, it stops for cinematics and then continues exactly where it left off. So I used that same code that I had AI generate, where because it uses invoke. So I was like, okay, in a cinematic, cancel. When the cinematic starts, obviously pause the timer invoke and then resume it where it left off. So yeah, that all worked for the timer, and so that way the timer doesn't expire mid cutscene because that would be awkward and unfair. Yeah, so that's the game so far. I'll get those 2 glitches worked out. I don't think I should need to make a video for that unless there's something major I discover that's worth talking about. So this should fortunately be the last video where we have to look at the basic dummy cinematic. I'll commit to that. I will commit to that. I'll commit to that. The next video you see on cinematic jutsu will be a full-on Wii animation. Probably Team Jutsu, but we'll see because that also requires me to add in logic for Team Jutsu. So I might not do that, but nevertheless, we're going to get a jutsu in here, and it's going to be from one of the Wii games. Maybe GameCube, we'll see. Something that doesn't have props, because I'm not ready to add props. Something that just I can run the animation and play it and make sure it works. Thanks, guys, for watching this. Maybe I'll just make them all a half hour long and just keep the consistency going. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.